Hi and welcome back to my channel. I've recently been reading Brené Brown's latest book, Dare to Lead. So this, which is amazing, by the way. So if you've not read it, you should read it, particularly if you're in any kind of leadership role. Before that, I also read Professor Bob Sutton's book, Good Boss, Bad Boss. So you can kind of see where my head's at the moment. So I'm thinking a lot about what it means to be a good boss, a compassionate boss, and to be honest, just a decent and kind human being in the workplace and beyond. This is the stuff that I'm fascinated by and always have been throughout my career. Before we dive any further in to this video, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you'll get a new video from me every Friday filled with psychology based tips to help you thrive at work. I'm Hayley Lewis. I'm a business psychologist who has helped thousands of managers and leaders over the years grow their confidence, motivate their teams, and go on to be the best version of themselves at work and in their careers. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you some stuff about servant leadership. Some of you might have heard the phrase kind of thrown around of servant leadership. So I want to talk to you a bit about what it is, why it's so important in today's kind of volatile and what feels like increasingly angry world, and how you can develop as a servant leader. So look, when I'm called in to work with busy, often stressed managers, what I find more often than not is their personal values have got a little bit out of kilter with how they're actually being at work. In other words, these kind, compassionate, funny, thoughtful individuals just become a bit of a shadow of themselves. Maybe they become a bit more impatient, they don't listen to staff, they're uncomfortable with handling colleagues' emotions, and then they go home and they feel a little bit disappointed and frustrated, and they think they're disappointed and frustrated with their teams, but more often than not they're disappointed and frustrated with themselves, and then Groundhog Day starts all over again. So it might be that building a servant leadership style not only helps you realign more closely with your values, it might actually just help your team be a bit happier, more motivated, and performing even better too. Servant leadership's gained a certain prominence in the media in recent years. So publication of books such as Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last offer up a style of leadership that I think offers a lovely alternative to the world we're seeing and the leadership in the world we're seeing on a daily basis. And yes, I'm looking at you politicians. A 2017 study by the University of Johannesburg did a deep dive into servant leadership, and so they looked at hundreds of books, research articles, texts, and they identified 8 characteristics that we would typically see in people we call or deem servant leaders. And these characteristics are authenticity, humility, compassion, accountability, courage, altruism, integrity, and listening. The researchers also found that people who are servant leaders are particularly strong in kind of 4 competencies or 4 kind of skill areas. So the first of these is empowerment, and what they found is those servant leaders who were strong in empowerment would take the time to develop others. They gave really clear direction, and they created a kind of a work environment that enabled people to do their best work and thrive. The second skill set area that the researchers found servant leaders are great at is around this thing called stewardship, and that's about somebody taking accountability for what needs to be done, but also taking accountability and responsibility for the interests of others, and leaving a positive legacy. The third area that servant leaders tend to excel at is around building relationships, and that's no surprise. So this is seen as a fundamental role of the servant leader, and this is underpinned by great communication, naturally collaborating, so always looking at the opportunity to work with others and kind of bringing down barriers that get in the way of people working well together. And then the fourth is around creating a compelling vision. So this is the complete opposite of those bland, god-awful corporate statements you see, 65-page PowerPoint presentations in font 6, filled with corporate jargon. Servant leadership is the complete opposite. They tell a story that weaves together and shows respect for the past, the present, and sets real clarity around the future direction. And they're really clear around how all of this is important and creates value for whoever it is they're trying to serve. So here are my 5 tips to help you become a servant leader that is loved rather than a boss that is loathed by your team. So number 1, work with a coach to assess how you're doing against servant leadership characteristics. So on my blog, and I'll give you the link, I've given the link to lots of different leadership questionnaires that particularly touch on servant leadership. Alternatively, why not ask your coach to create just a very simple 360-degree style feedback questionnaire. This is something that I've done for quite a few of my coaching clients. Number 2 is get to really know each person in your team. So servant leaders, as we've seen from the research, are great at connecting and building relationships. And just as you are more than your job and your job title, so is each person in your team. So why not commit to going out for a coffee with each of them? It only has to be for 20 minutes or so. No agenda. Doesn't have to be you go and take your one-to-ones out for a coffee. It literally is just going out and connecting and just finding out a bit about them, sharing a bit about yourself, and just connecting on a deeper level. This is something that I used to like to do with my own team when I had one as a corporate leader. Number 3 is work on your listening skills. So go on, be honest. Are you one of those people where when somebody's talking, you're kind of half listening because you're thinking of your smart response? Most of us do it. I know I have. I'm going to put my hands up. So a tactic one of my coaching clients has used, and she's happy for me to share, is she has written the words "shut up and listen" on alternate pages of her notebook she uses when she meets with staff. So this serves as a kind of a reminder, quite a blatant reminder, but a reminder nonetheless for her to just quieten her mind down and just pay attention to what's being said and also what's not being said. She has said to me that without a doubt this has made a fundamental difference to her ability to really listen to her staff, and it's helped build deeper relationships. So look, number 4 is if you want your team to share stuff with you, so that you can get to know them. You've got to lead the way on this. It's a kind of reciprocal tit for tat thing. So one manager I worked with felt that he was having to make the same requests again and again and again with one of his team. She then deliver stuff, a piece of work, and it wasn't quite what he was looking for, wasn't quite to the quality that he felt it should be, and he was getting more and more frustrated, and the problem was kind of getting worse and worse and worse. And the turning point was this: in a one-to-one, he wasn't in a great space himself at that point. He shared something deeply personal that was affecting him and his home life. So he was having some marriage difficulties, and he kind of shared this with this particular member of his team, and it was only then that she opened up about her mental health issues. So she'd been diagnosed with depression and she was on medication, and she'd been on medication for about 6 months and was struggling with it. And she opened up about the fact that she was struggling to think. She felt like she was being slower, that at times she was kind of wading through treacle, and yeah, she just wasn't able to kind of pay attention or be as quick as she'd been in the past. This was a game changer. So because he now understood what was going on, the manager was able to, offer help, think more carefully about how he asked for pieces of work to be done. He gave her more lead-in time, so gave her a bit more time to do stuff. And this absolutely turned their working relationship around. And the fifth tip, look, if you're a perfectionist, which if you've got into the boss role, you probably are a perfectionist because you've kind of been driven to get into that role. You might need to work on your self-compassion first. So there's research that shows people who are highly self-critical tend to be as critical on other people. So if you're a perfectionist boss and you're really harsh on yourself, and you have that kind of negative voice always telling yourself you're not good enough, that's also going to leak out in how you are with your team. So you're always going to be looking for their shortcomings rather than what they've done well, because that's what you do with yourself. So if you want to develop the compassion aspect of servant leadership, it really starts with you being kind to yourself. And if you're in a role where other leaders report into you, you might be chief executive, and you've kind of got other, people in leadership roles reporting into you, why not carry out a survey of your team? So identify those in your team who exemplify the servant leadership characteristics and buddy them up maybe with those who might be struggling a little bit. So encourage that kind of co-coaching environment. And if you're looking to become a better, more compassionate leader, then why not grab my free guide, because this will give you a framework for powerful conversations which will transform your work relationships. And did you like this video? So if you haven't already, don't worry, I'm not judging you, but if you haven't already, why not subscribe by hitting the subscribe button? And did any of my tips kind of stand out for you? Was there anything about the research that you were particularly interested in? If so, pop your comments in the box below. And as I've said in previous videos, you have a lot of wisdom to share. So if you've got thoughts on servant leadership and tips that you think will help others on their journey, why not share them in the comments box below? That's it from me for now, and I'll see you next Friday.